What's the most creepily intelligent thing your pet has ever done? I woke up one summer morning to a flooded basement. My dad was yelling at me that I had left the outdoor faucet running, which caused the flood. Spent hours and lots of money cleaning it up. Come to find out, my dog, after watching me use the faucet, figured out how to turn it on. We only found this out because one day my dad heard someone cranking on the faucet, and when he looked into the yard, my boxer's mouth was around the valve, twisting her head like a confused puppy until it turned on. She never did figure out how to turn it off though. Not my pet, but the dog of a farmer in my grandma's town that recently had given birth to puppies. When we were strolling around by the farm, we saw the dog and said to her, "Hey, show us your puppies." Next thing we know, the dog ran around the farm and came back with all her cute little puppies and let us play with them. What a wonderful day. That is so sweet and wholesome. My friend's dog knows he's not allowed onto one very specific carpeted area in the house, and he knows never to step onto that area. How does he like to be a smartass about it? He grabs his favorite toy, casually tosses it onto said carpeted area, looks at us, and gives us the "well, my toy's there and I have to step onto the carpet to get it." He does it so slowly and so deliberately that you know he's being a complete smartass about it. I can't help but laugh every time he does it, which is not often. He typically does it when he's desperate for our play because he knows he'll get a laugh and a positive reaction out of it. We had a dog growing up that wasn't allowed at the dinner table to beg for food, so at dinner time he would get as close to the dinner table as possible and turn his back to it and look over his shoulder as we all ate. My dad has always had problems with throwing his back out, and it usually makes him unable to move for several weeks. Anyways, one time when he threw out his back, my dog grabbed a blanket in her mouth and slowly spread it over my dad while he was sleeping. We were all amazed and gave her a treat. We were all amazed and gave her a treat. This sounds like the dog version of everyone clapped and the manager gave me a thumbs up. Except I believe you. Woke me up and brought me outside to under the deck, where he very obviously showed me the cat that got out and was hiding under there. He looked at the cat, then back at me, then at the cat, then back at me. Frick's sake, Larry, I told you not to rat me out. When I was younger, I lost a watch that I really loved. Around that time, my cat developed a habit of using his front paws to reach under the fridge and just scramble around under there like crazy. He was seriously obsessed and did that for almost a year, until one night he pulled out a tray that had been under the fridge, and on it was my watch. After that he never touched the fridge again. He was a good boy. That cat totally winged it there in the first place. He just wanted it back. My cat is diabetic. About a month ago he had to start insulin twice daily. I have an auto feeder which goes off every 12 hours and gives a proportioned meal. Since I work early in the morning, the first meal goes off at 5 AM. Half an hour after he eats, he gets his insulin. He is a good boy and sits very still while I give him his needle. Every time I tell him good boy and give him a quick once over with his favorite brush. On my day off I forgot to set my alarm for his insulin. At 5:30 he jumped right up on my chest and patted my face ever so gently until I got out of bed. He immediately ran right to the fridge and sat down, where the insulin is, waiting for his first brushing. Good boy knows he is a good boy. I had a diabetic cat, and he'd always get a little lunch meat after his injection. He'd often stay in my lap after the injection, batting the syringe, like we'll totally have more shots for more ham, please. There was a time when, coming back from a trip, the balls of my feet were swollen and it hurt going up and down the stairs. My cat, that little crap, would actually imitate me by limping up and down the stairs, taking the steps one at a time, while meowing pitifully. I swear if he could talk, he would have said something like, "See, this is how stupid you look." That is hilarious and insanely rude. I actually have a story for this. I taught my dog to play hide and seek. I made him sit in the kitchen while I hid a rawhide somewhere in the house. He would then search until he found it and would then bring it back to me. I would then tell him to hide it and he would. One day I was searching for the dang rawhide for like 10 minutes and could not find it. Searched everywhere. Eventually I had to give up, totally confused. Next morning I open a dresser drawer to get a pair of shorts and there it is. He saw a slightly cracked drawer, dropped it in, closed it, and outsmarted a human. I was very proud. Reminds me of my old dog who used to hide my shoes so I wouldn't leave. After I had left for college, I visited home and on my last day I couldn't find my shoe so I had to go out and buy a new pair. My mom called me that night to tell me she found my shoe inside her acoustic guitar. My cousin had a koi fish pond and 2 dogs. One night the dogs started barking during the middle of the night really loud and urgently, and they almost never bark at anything. My cousin and her parents knew something was weird and went out to check. One of the fish somehow managed to jump out the pond and was flopping around next to the water on the concrete, and one dog was trying to help it back in the water with his nose while the other was barking for my cousin or her parents to help. Once they watched them place the fish in the water, they went back in the kennels to sleep. They would watch the pond a lot from then on. They said those classes in fish herding would never pay off and all he could do was teach, perpetuating the cycle. While at the park playing fetch, my dog spotted a squirrel and took off after it into the woods. I couldn't find her for the life of me, so my mom and I started driving around to look for her and checking our home voicemail every 10 minutes in case someone found her and called the number on her tags. 2 hours go by and we decide to go home to eat before continuing our search. Turns out she walked the 3 miles back home from the park and snuck under the backyard deck and up the deck stairs and was waiting at the back door for us upon our return. That smart bee. Still love her though. My 13 pounds ginger cat always had to be near me. Some of the doors in my house didn't latch, and he learned to open them by using his body as a battering ram. Okay, fine. So one day I'm in a closed room with a door that does latch, and I hear the doorknob rattle. It rattles for a bit then turns, and the cat pops the door open with his weight and saunters in. I miss him. Realizing she can use her nose to open the metal popcorn tin. I watched my Australian Shepherd problem solve how to get her tennis balls that get stuck under the furniture out by taking another tennis ball and rolling it to knock the stuck one out. She seemed very pleased with herself. My dog tried this once, then she had no tennis balls. I was in my closet getting dressed, and my Doberman came, obviously wanting me to follow him. I did, in a hurry, and found my kid with a handful of screws that someone, one of the decorators probably, had left in the bay window. She was about to put them in her mouth. Kid was 2. That was the best dog. Not mine. By my mother had 2 cats in Hawaii before I was born. She would tell stories about how one, Epo, was very intelligent, and the other, Popoki, was as dumb as a bag of rocks. Made a great pair. She would talk about how they'd be playing out back and she would call them in for dinner. Epo would immediately show up, but Popoki would be lost in her very small backyard. She would just look at Epo and say, "Epo, go get Popoki," and Epo would run out and guide Popoki into the house and to his food dish so that he could have dinner. Same sort of thing if she had no idea where Popoki was. She would just tell Epo to find him, and Epo would go search the house and bring Popoki to her. Rock and a rocking chair. I thought my living room was haunted for weeks. He has to take antibiotics for 10 days. They are pills. In the beginning, I was wondering why he wasn't getting better. Turns out, the butthole was keeping them in his cheek or under his tongue and spitting them out under the closet. So now I hold him until he swallows and then I check his mouth. It's really one of those times I wish I could explain to him why I am torturing him with eye drops and painkillers and whatnot. You are a senior citizen and you have a severe cold. Stop spitting things out. On the other hand, he has never scratched or bitten me, just struggles and pulls away. He is a very sweet cat. Senior citizen made me laugh. It's so much easier to dose cats with liquid meds. They don't really understand how to get the liquid out, so it mostly gets swallowed. One time I took my dog to my parents' house for whatever reason. On the way home I passed by a park with an off-leash dog park, and since he had been so good on our trip and visit, I decided he deserved some time to run around with other dogs. It was a weekday afternoon, so there weren't very many people there, and the people who were there seemed to be good friends. They completely ignored me, and more importantly they ignored my very people-loving dog. None of the other dogs were interested in playing with my dog either, so we took his ball to the far side of the park to play. One toss made the ball bounce out of the grass and into the mulch brush. He ran in after it and I heard a pitiful whimper from him. He came limping out of the brush with one of his front paws held off the ground. I rushed to him and inspected his paw, but I couldn't find any cut or splinter or anything. But I decided that it was time to go. He refused to walk, so I had to carry this 55 pounds idiot back to the car. I distinctly remember him staring at the group of people on our way out, while I struggled to open the gates to get out with him in my arms. We got back to the car and I had to set him down on the ground so I could get the car door open, and he seemed to have no problem putting weight on his injured paw. As soon as I opened the door, he jumped right in and settled into his usual car position. When we got home, he was totally fine and showed no signs that his paw was ever bothering him. To this day I believe that he wanted to leave so badly that he faked an injury, and his glare at the group of people was his way of saying frick all of you and your unfriendly dogs. Ag shame. I wish someone could have at least pet for a minute. If I called my girlfriend at around 9 PM on a Friday, my dog would always get excited and head to the truck. I was stationed in Shanghai for about a year, but lived for years in Thailand with my GF and my dog. Whenever I had a long weekend, I'd fly back to Thailand. My dog quickly picked up on the idea that whenever my GF switched from speaking Thai to English, she was talking to me. I would call her when I arrived at the airport on a Friday evening, as it was only about 15 minutes from our home, and she'd come pick me up. My dog was able to put this whole scenario together and went ape crap whenever I called on a Friday evening, and he would immediately head for the truck to go pick me up. When I would call her at other hours of the day, he would look at her like he knew who she was talking to, but he knew that it didn't mean that I was coming home. That's adorable. My boyfriend's Dobby recognizes the sound of my boyfriend's work truck and starts whining and pacing and getting up on the arm of the couch to stare out the window looking for him. Her ears will perk up at the sound of a big diesel truck going down our street, but she doesn't move from her spot unless it's his truck she hears. My cat can open doors. She understands that turning the knob unlatches the door. It takes her a few tries, but she does it all the time now. Getting into the office, where she isn't allowed. I have also found her cat toy stash. I have no idea why, but she hides her favorite toys in a few caches around my apartment. Fake to have a paw injury so I'd carry him around the house. One of my cats used to fake a limp. Everyone was utterly convinced it was real, but I caught him. He was charging up the stairs full tilt. Then he saw me, and limp, and limp. I'm onto you, cat. I went to the toilet and found my cat and they having a crap. I'm surprised he wasn't reading the fricking newspaper. Sometimes my cat and I share special moments in the toilet, during which we're both crapping. What makes it especially special is that he makes eye contact the whole time. Had a budgie, Basil. He was cool. He would always sit on my shoulder and sleep while watching TV. If ever my flatmate and I were chilling on the couch, he would fly from me to her, land on her shoulder, do a crap and then fly back to me. Basil never liked Claire much. My dog once started barking at the door, like someone was about to knock or come in, while I was eating. I got up to see who was there and it was no one. I went back and some of my food was on the ground, being shared by the dog and two cats. I think one of the cats knocked some off, so they worked together as a team to steal my food. Dr. Peter Venkman. Human sacrifice. Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria. I had a cat once who knew that to get water from the faucet in the sink she would tap on the handle, not the faucet, and look at me. If she had opposable thumbs she would have turned it herself. Other cats would just look at the faucet and wait. She also would leap on her brother if he started to scratch the edge of the sofa, to get him to stop, knowing it was not allowed. She also not only recognized herself in the mirror, but would use it to groom the hair on her back that she couldn't see otherwise. My dog has epilepsy, so he has to take a pill every morning. I broke it in half and put it in his food and let go at it. Checked a few minutes later and I see the bowl is completely empty except for one of the halves left in the center. I walked into the living room where he was, looked at him and said forget something as a joke. He looked at me, got up, went back to his bowl and ate the pill in front of me. That sucker knows what's up. I put the pill in wet food for my cat. It was antibiotic. I jokingly said you don't even know that I just tricked you to take the medication you need. He stopped eating, looked at me, left a loud meow and went to hide behind the curtain. I jinxed myself. I had to force feed him for the rest of the prescription. The cat is smart. I have a chocolate lab and a black cat. My dog loves tennis balls. My cat doesn't want my dog to be happy, so he would sit on her tennis balls like a chicken hatching an egg. One morning I was getting ready for work and my dog is barking at my cat because he's sitting on her tennis ball. I thought, alright butthole, that's it. And I went to the closet, got 3 cans of tennis balls, opened them and tossed them around the apartment. My cat seemed unmoved as my dog yelped in glee at her newly found fortune. I left for work. When I got back home that evening I hear my dog barking in the dining room. When I get there I see all 10 tennis balls in the corner, guarded by my cat and my dog barking at him. He looked me in the eyes as if to say, frick you, I win again. My cat doesn't want my dog to be happy, not sure why, but this line made me laugh really hard. Not my dog, I have one but he hasn't had any remarkable moment for now, but my neighbor's dog. He is old and frail and neglects him, even though he gave him a place to stay. He used to be a stray. He knows he won't get much food from his owner, if any, so he usually spends his days roaming the neighborhood and going to house. He knows specifically which neighbor will give him food and knows the precise time we all finish lunch. He used to frequent my grandma's house, waiting patiently at the front door for leftovers. If she didn't have any, he would leave with dignity, although he took a crap in my grandma's garden as a revenge once. The most intelligent part though is his ability to sneak outside his fenced yard, and nobody knows how. Even with the gates closed, he would suddenly appear outside or inside. Once, I watched him closely as he was walking home, to make sure I could see him. However, suddenly he stopped and looked at me, never breaking eye contact. I had to sneeze, and by the time I could look back at him, 3 freaking seconds, he was back in his yard. The sucker was clever to take the opportunity. He also is aware of the concept of traffic lights and pedestrian crosses over roads, as I've witnessed him multiple times waiting patiently for his light to turn green so he could pass the street, and knows to look for cars anytime he has to cross on an unmarked area. My dog was kinda just trotting alongside me when he got an itch on his butt. Without stopping his run, he reached his head all the way back and started nibbling the itchy spot. So for about 10 paces, his back feet were running forward and his front feet were running backward. Jesus, that's some athleticism. That's like dribbling between your legs and doing Cirque du Soleil. My brother was sitting at the table eating cake when he hears our dog barking at the front door. He gets up to check it out, usually means someone is about to ring the doorbell, and then our dog sprints back to the unsupervised cake and eats it all in one bite. So I have this cat, Chairman Meow. He had to go live at my parents' because I was in the Navy and my ship was deploying, and they started letting him go out and come in as he pleased, which I was totally in favor of. He was getting chubby as an apartment cat. Then my mom started to notice something weird. Now, for context, she's in her 60s and had just retired. My dad was still working for another year or two. With me and my brother grown and moved out, there was a lot of time home alone for her. Not that she didn't go out or have hobbies, but that's beside the point. What she noticed is that sometimes, she'd let the cat out, then 10 minutes later he'd walk by inside. She started worrying that she was having blackouts, or suffering from something with early onset in the name or something. It was happening often enough that she started keeping paper logs. Then one day she went down to the finished basement for the first time in a while, and stepped into a horror film. Like I said, my brother and I had moved out, and the basement was carpeted etc. But was mostly being used to store stuff, including, apparently, blood. Lots of blood, staining the carpet, dripping down a wall, in the ceiling. She even found a pile of entrails. Turns out what was happening was, the cat had gotten up in the suspended ceiling, and found a loose brick in the foundation. He'd worked it loose. Being a cat, he still demanded humans serve him by opening the door, but he could go in and out as he pleased also, and he was bringing his trophies back into the basement. The entrails I mentioned, on closer inspection, it was a rabbit. Well, half a rabbit, and that's how my cat made my mom think she was losing her mind. I have a blind, born with fricked up eyes, 150 pounds of solid muscle, American bulldog. He loves everyone. If he hears a new voice, The love wiggles begin. He is just a huge liver dog. Sleeps with my 4-year-old every night. Gets along with my cats and other dogs. Just a giant sweetheart. Well, a work buddy of mine gave me a ride home once. Invited him in for a bit. We walk in. My pup starts his love wiggles. And stops. Ears full. Tail droops. His expression changes from his usual happy-go-lucky self into the dog he looks like. A vicious monster. Well, he bares his teeth. Starts growling at my buddy. And when my son walked into the room, he went nuts. He lunged at my buddy, snarling, teeth bared. WTF. He never acts like this. Ever. I was so confused and embarrassed. My buddy leaves. I scold my pup. Life goes on. Fast forward a few months and it turns out the buddy of mine from work is arrested for possession of kiddie pee. My blind beast who loves everyone somehow knew to hate this guy. He instinctively disliked him. And when my son came into the room, he went into protect mode and tried to get the guy. Creepy stuff. My cat, Tuffy, stole a piece of bread off of the stove and put it in the floor next to the cabinet. She then stared at it intensely and motionlessly for an hour. We thought that was creepy. Then a mouse came out from behind the cabinet to get the bread and she pounced it. She was using the bread as motherfucking bait. This is the same cat who routinely burns her tongue licking light bulbs, hisses at them, and keeps licking. Genius. But the light bulb thing reminds me why we never have candles in the house. Our old black and white cat would be mesmerized by them, creeping closer and closer to the flame, and then burned his whiskers. He didn't learn. So the next time we had a flame, he did it again. No more candles in our house. Had a cat I had a rudimentary system of communication with. When she was hungry, she'd walk into the room and sort of lick her lips, if you will, flicking her tongue in and out a few times, and I'd then follow her to the kitchen. She also always wanted to claim my computer chair for herself, but I wouldn't let her sit on it. So one day she comes in my bedroom, licks her lips, turns towards the door, and as I get up to follow her, she gave a little triumphant chirp, whipped round at the speed of light and jumped on my now vacant chair, then curled up in the middle and proceeded to groom her fur while looking very pleased with herself. I was tricked by a cat. Edit. Other examples of boopity boop's intelligence. I didn't get her. She got me. My windows don't open up. They open outwards, and Boop one day figured out she could jump up on a little ledge outside, then reach up like a human doing a pull-up and heave herself up and in through the window. I'd only seen her in my front garden and occasionally said hello to her until the day she decided to just invite herself in. Because my windows would be closed at night, if she was inside and wanted to go out, she would wake me up by coming into my bedroom and using her paws to bat my shoes together until the noise woke me up. When I later adapted to that noise and was able to sleep through it, she took to jumping on the bed and pouncing on my exposed toes with her claws repeatedly until I got up. She relentlessly tried to teach me how to hunt. She would bring mice in virtually every single day, alive and unharmed, and then release them and have me help her track them down and catch them. Once, when I caught the mouse and went out the front door and put it outside, I came back in to be greeted by a facial expression like I was the most stupid creature she'd ever laid eyes on. She then hopped out the window and came back in a moment later with the same mouse. We developed a hunting game we played a few times a week where she would attack my arm if I jiggled my fingers a certain way. When her grabbing, kicking, scratching and biting became too much, she would release my arm as soon as I said, "Can I have my hand back please?" Boop. I later learned from her previous owners they had seen around over the couple of years after she moved in with me, but she would purposefully turn her tail on them and ignore them. She gave a little triumphant chirp. Holy crap, that worked. I had friends round and one of them brought fudge. Cats were interested but got chased off it a couple of times. They wait for attention to shift to something else. Little cat goes into the middle of the group of friends, acts all cute, causes a distraction, while bigger cat gets on the table, knocks down the fudge. Little cat quietly moves on and then joins her brother eating fudge. Proper teamwork that not only used their individual strengths but exploited our weaknesses. Impressed. The bigger cat whored out the little cat to get some fudge. When I lived with my ex, we got a cat that would occasionally come make pitifully adorable tiny mews outside my bedroom door. where my computer was, when she wanted attention. Usually it was 50/50 wanting to be cuddled or wanting me to shake the food bowl so she couldn't see the bottom. One time she sounded a lot more urgent than usual. I went and opened the door and she ran off. Okay, not cuddles. I followed her down the stairs and she turned left into the dining room instead of right into the kitchen where her food was. Okay, what's up? She went to the middle of the floor and sat down, staring at a window. Took me a couple of seconds to realize the bird feeder usually suction cup to the outside was missing and she was very distressed about it. I went outside and put it back on the window, and she jumped on the stool by the window to watch me do it. When I went back and I walked back into the dining room, she looked over her shoulder at me, then jumped down, ran over, rubbed against my legs for a few seconds, then went back and jumped back on the stool again, waiting for birds to show up. That is freaking adorable. My cat pooped in our toilet once. He didn't flush though. There's actually a lot of people that train their cats to use the toilet rather than a litter box, and there's tons of info on the web about it. I don't know if it's creepy as such, but it's very intuitive. I've struggled with depression and CPTSD for years, and every morning as my husband leaves for work he tells the dogs goodbye, and he tells my dog, an Australian Kelpie called Sterling, to look after me. His border collie ex, Daphne, can't be told to do anything, so she doesn't give a crap, but wherever I am, Sterling makes sure to watch me. If I'm inside the house, he will pick the spot on the veranda that is closest to where I am in the house. If I'm gardening or in the chicken coop, he is never far away. When I hand out the laundry to dry, he sits at my feet. When I ride my horses out on trails, he's only a few steps behind, even when Daphne gets bored and goes home to cause trouble. But if my husband is home, Sterling takes a day off and will do the obnoxious stuff that Daphne delights in every day. It's as if he feels he does not need to protect me when my husband is home. With how intuitive Sterling is about you, it might be worth considering training him to be a psychiatric service dog. That intuition isn't something that can be taught. Posted this before, not exactly creepy, but more dang they're smarter than we realize. Big kind off in a good way, used to live in a house with a long driveway, like approx 1/8 of a mile. Neighbor had a similar driveway right next to ours. I had 2 dogs, neighbors had some as well. Both sets of dogs and fences pretty far apart. As far as I know the 2 groups never met. This will matter later. Neighbors kept their dogs almost exclusively outside. Kept mine almost exclusively inside. Had a doggy door and they basically only went out for bathroom. We'd sit in the den with the dogs all the time and hear the neighbors' dogs bark. My dogs wouldn't react 95% of the time. Wouldn't even lift their ears heads. Would be like it wasn't happening. But if we could hear it, obviously they could. But in the 5% of times they would react, invariably it was because someone was driving down my long driveway to our house. Always. Without fail. Either a package or a friend visiting, didn't matter. My dogs would react to their dogs barking a certain way that meant someone's coming to your house, not mine. And once we realized it was happening, we pretty extensively tested it. Saw multiple examples of their dogs barking for someone visiting on their driveway and our dogs ignoring it. So not just a bark that means someone's approaching, but differentiation between driveways that were side by side. That, my friends, seems a pretty sophisticated form of communication for completely random, but this reminds me of the Twilight bark in 101 Dalmatians. My cat was sitting on the front porch sunning herself one day, and my dad walks outside to do some yard work. He tells her to make herself useful and go catch a mouse or something, and walks off. My mom confirmed she heard my dad say this through the open window near the porch. A short while later, my dad is passing through the front yard and sees the cat laying in the grass with her front legs outstretched in front of her. Upon closer inspection, she's got something clamped between her front paws. It was a mouse. I think I remember reading once that cats can actually understand human commands way better than dogs. They just don't care. Not a pet, but I recall as a kid, we were playing treasure hunts. The clue had me in an area with a phone box and a few bushes. There was a cute black and white cat nearby, and for the crick, I asked the cat, "Where's the next clue?" And no word of a lie, the cat looked at the bush and appeared to nod towards it. Checked the bush and indeed, there was the next clue. That cat has lived in my memory for around 20 years now. My cat would not get up from my godfather's chest 2-3 months before he died from breast cancer. My cat randomly started peeing into the toilet. No one ever taught her. I just heard trickling in the bathroom one day and, upon investigating, found her squatting on the seat. She was very confused when there was nothing for her to scratch over, though. This happened twice that I witnessed, but after that we moved and she does not seem to have picked it up with the toilets in the new place. My dog would escape the house at night, stroll to a nearby cafe and beg for food before coming back in the morning, sitting outside the gate smiling like an idiot while we opened it. We only found out about his exploits because someone eventually brought him back from the cafe. He would know when to cross roads also, as he never got hit once. Eventually he became senile and would wait outside the wrong house, so we just made extra sure to keep him indoors. Before anyone says my family is crap at keeping animals because he keeps running, we do walk them twice a day. He's just an extremely inquisitive creature who loves food. He knew the route because that's where we walk him and was always learning how to escape. Whether it be undoing a door latch, squeezing through places we thought was impossible, or climbing. I had a really bad day and was in my room crying. My cockatiel Stormageddon started screaming from his cage, so I got him out. He jumped onto my shoulder and put his head on my cheek and started saying "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay" over and over again. I say that to him when he freaks out in his cage at night time. A car honks a horn outside and he starts screaming and flapping his wings. I didn't realize he could tell I was sad and say it back to me to comfort me like I comfort him, let alone say it at all. We had a parrot who did like the evil version of this. He would bite you then say "No, stop it, ouch." Once he followed up by laughing. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.